I don't even know how to hook this video with this information. This is the craziest thing I've found yet. You gotta know who BlackRock is, and you gotta know what happened in 1971. It's all gonna connect, and I promise it's good. Lock in with me, don't get bored. Something happened in 1971. This is top 1% earners of income. It's when we started seeing a decline in wages. When we started seeing income inequality in the United States. You can home prices since 1971. Last one because it's my favorite, but you got to get the point. This is all from What the F Happened in 1971. Something happened in 1971. This is our debt. Looks like he could stab somebody. Well, in 1971, this gentleman decided to remove us from the gold standard. If you're unfamiliar with this game, this is Richard Nixon. He was the president of the United States, and during his second term, he would go through one of the most controversial terms in our country's history. He created a world where we could print as much money as we wanted because we didn't have to have a certain amount of dollars per the amount of gold we had. Quick flashback then back to the point, but we need to know this. Back in 1944, we had something called Hatton Woods. What was Hatton Woods? Hatton Woods was when we financially tried to take over the world by attaching our dollar to every single currency that mattered in the world, and we did that because we had the utility of gold, and everybody in the world wanted gold. And in fact, every country that wants to get some of our gold, all you got to do is give us $35 and an ounce of it is yours. A couple of countries ran the math. France was one of them, and they began to ran our gold dry, and by the second term of Richard Nixon, something had to be done. How does this all tie to BlackRock? This is Larry Fink, and he is the CEO and founder of BlackRock. Just because he's one of the biggest protagonists of the financial world today does not mean he is the protagonist of yesterday's economic story. See, Larry Fink didn't just come out of thin air. Also, this is officially your mental health warning. If you'd like to not be frustrated, this is where it starts to become abundantly clear what all is going on. Only going to be here for a quick second, but this is a humongous moment in history where bank leaders had a secret meeting to found the central bank of our country. The central bank of our country is called the Federal Reserve. All you need to know is that representatives of Citibank, JP Morgan, and even the Congress got together to form a centralized economic power that we know today as our central bank, the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is a bank. It even lists so right on their website when it was founded, and the first line of who we are is the Federal Reserve is a U.S. central bank. Banks make money by getting interest. Interest from loans such as mortgages, auto loans, business loans, and personal loans. Bretton Woods, which I think I said Hatton Woods earlier. If I did, I apologize. Bretton Woods was our chance to take over the world now with our new central bank system. We did that by tethering our dollar to everyone else's currency by allowing them to tap in to all of that gold that we had. Like I said earlier, by the time we got to this man's presidency, we were running out of gold, so we needed some advice. Welcome in the protagonist to our story, Peter G. Peterson. Peter's parents came to America in the early 1920s as immigrants from South Greece. He would attend University of Chicago's School of Business in 1951, receiving his MBA. Quick ADHD side note, when I was growing up, anytime somebody said they had an MBA, I always in my brain thought that they were saying they used to be in the NBA, and there were so many short old white dudes that I just thought were ballers back in the day. Starting at an advertising agency, he would eventually work his way all the way up to CEO of this movie equipment producer. He would then be the CEO of Lehman Brothers, who were one of the banks that actually failed during the big financial crisis of 2008. He was the CEO of Bell and Howell from 63 to 71, and then of Lehman Brothers from 73 to 84. But he had this weird gap between 71 and 73 of about a year and a half that was just unaccounted for in his CEO repertoire. Now, the guy that did the tapping of the shoulder was not Larry Fink, but Larry Fink in today's market, 2025, is very grateful for what was about to happen. Our friend Pete here unfortunately passed away in 2018, but the number one thing on his resume had nothing to do with the two companies he CEO'd. When he passed away, the number one thing people talked about was the company that he helped co-found, the Blackstone Group. Zach, that sounds a lot like BlackRock. So Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, didn't just come out of thin air. He was originally on the board of directors for Blackstone, the group that Peter founded. And so in 1971, when Peter was on a CEO hiatus, Richard Nixon had a big issue he was looking to have solved, and it had to do with monetary policy. Now remember, the wealth share since 1971 and inflation since 1971 is a huge reason everything's unaffordable today, but it's also the biggest reason why people like Larry Fink hold so many trillions worth of assets, because everything's gotten more expensive, so everything they own is worth more. The only way that Larry could have the trillions in assets he has today is if there was less monetary discipline. See, we need money to inflate, but the only way money inflates is if there's more of it. And if we keep this gold standard around, we frankly just can't print enough money to make our assets worth enough. What would inevitably cause graphs like we have today when we look at our national debt all started in 1971 when we removed ourselves from the financial discipline that came with having utility-backed currency. But did Richard make this decision on his own? You know, Richard Nixon had what every president has. He had an appointed Secretary of Commerce. And Richard Nixon was a lucky guy because his secretary actually drafted up an entire report that labeled every single country and showed how we were falling behind in global trade. The report really impressed Nixon to the point where he went ahead in August of 1971, released us from the gold standard, upending us from that 1944 meeting that was had with the other 40 countries about their currencies. It was done. It was over. We're not attaching our dollar to gold anymore, and the inflation would begin as we walk through all those graphs. Larry Fink and the BlackRocks of the world continue to stack trillions of assets that only keep accumulating more wealth due to things like inflation that all stem from 1971's gold standard being released. But who wrote that report? You may have already connected the dots. Yeah, so remember that 1.5 year gap in his CEO career lifestyle? Yeah, he spent it as the Secretary of Commerce for Richard Nixon, causing one of the most controversial economic policies that has ever been passed under any presidential term that would inevitably lead to Watergate and his impeachment. 7 of the 8 people that broke into the Watergate office that caused the Watergate scandal were former CIA intelligence officers or translators. That's weird. With money free to print, he would create Blackstone. Blackstone would birth this guy, and this guy owns pretty much everything in America. A little fun fact for you to chew on as you leave is Peter Peterson would also serve as the chairman of the Council of Foreign Relations in the U.S. government for 22 years, taking the seat of an all-familiar name who had this position beforehand, a very innocent name, David Rockefeller. I've been deep diving the Federal Reserve for the past 2.5 years, and here are the top 10 reasons I don't like them. Number 1, their name. They're not a Federal Reserve Bank because they're not federal. They don't hold reserves, and you can't make deposits there, so they're not a bank. Number 2, not only do they not have reserves, nobody else has reserves. See, as of 2020, there was a rule, and that rule said all the banks in America have to hold a certain amount of reserves with our Federal Reserve. As of 2020, that reserve requirement is now 0%. If that sounds like a bad idea to you, Number 3. I want to be in the Jekyll Island room. What's the Jekyll Island room? In 1910, following a state bank panic, 8 people got into a room together at a J.P. Morgan resort on an island in Georgia. We didn't even know Georgia had islands. And they met together to form the Federal Reserve. It's not just where they were meeting or why they were meeting. It's who was meeting. And I'm going to get into number 8 because that's a huge one. But this one is huge because what if I told you that 0.25% of the entire nation's wealth was in that room? 8 people. That'd be crazy, right? But that's not the stat. It's actually 2.6. 2.6% of the entire nation. Oh, I got it wrong again. Move that decimal. 26% of the white. A lot of money in one room. I spit there a little. Number 4. Then the branding of it. Nelson Aldrich, the senator at this meeting, took this billionaire plan from the 6-day meeting they had on a secret island that they had to take a train to a boat, and they had to lie to their families. So why they were there, they said they were on a duck hunting trip and didn't use their real names. Nelson Aldrich went back to Congress and said, hey, I came up with this really cool idea all by myself. It's called the Aldrich Plan. Presented it to Senate. Senate said this leans too far in favor of Wall Street. They rebranded it the Federal Reform. They still didn't like it. Then a boat sank. And then after that, they rebranded it the Federal Reserve Act and it passed. Number 6, the Pujo Committee. I'm not talking about Albert Pujols. I'm talking about the Pujo Committee. P-U-J-O. It was in 1912, the same year as that boat. And that whole committee was set up to say, hey, is this Federal Reserve thing just like a money trust? Are they just trying to take over the country's wealth? And guess what they found? Of almost all the major corporations that operated in America, almost all of them funneled to the same 3 to 4 bankers. Those same 3 to 4 bankers at the Jekyll Island meeting. From everything I can find in research is the Pujo Committee said, yes, there is a money trust here, but nothing really happened. Number 7, let's talk about when it was founded. December 23rd, 1913. Why was it passed so close to Christmas? Also, why did it pass at a 43 to 26 vote, a 17 vote difference, yet 27 lawmakers weren't present? 27 lawmakers were on Christmas recess when this passed. If all the lawmakers aren't present for a bill's passing, should the bill even be able to be passed? But it was. And the only difference from the original document, the Nelson Aldrich Plan, and the Federal Reserve Act was instead of there just being one major central bank, there's now a major central bank that the president gets to appoint the chair of, and there's 13 sub-banks that are also set up as private entities. Number 8. In 1914, do you know what happened? See, let me just break something down for you. Since the dawn of time, since France, since Rome, pick a war, they've been funded by debt. And that debt is typically funded by war bonds. And those war bonds are created by a country, by a government, or if you're so lucky, by a central bank. A central bank's existence is to fund and finance war. And what happened 7 months after the founding of the Federal Reserve? World War I. And the Great Depression Confession from Mr. Milton Friedman. He wrote a book. In this book, he said the Federal Reserve either purposefully or haphazardly allowed for the Great Depression. When I originally read this book, I was like, how has nobody talked about this? Why is this not online more? And I was able to find a transcription from a speech given by the current Federal Reserve Board of Governors, soon-to-be chairman Ben Bernanke in 2001 at a Chicago birthday party for Milton Friedman, economist who worked with Reagan. He is a humongous name in the economist world. You can like him, hate him. He's smart. And what he said was very interesting. By not funding one of the main New York banks that ended up creating the large domino that toppled all the other banks, because there were hundreds of bank failures in the Great Depression. Like, people were using seashells as money. That's wild. In that time, if they had funded the Federal Reserve Bank that New York bank, it wouldn't have fallen. It wouldn't have created that domino effect. And if they hadn't run rates so hot and so low through the 20s, creating the roaring 20s, leading up to 1927, 1928, when they went and raised the rate, they caused this retraction effect, this rubber band-like effect that created scarcity. People ran to the banks didn't have money, bank run began. And Milton Friedman wrote about that in his book and said the Federal Reserve did this, and they might have done it on purpose. And then Ben Bernanke in this transcription, I read it all the way through. It was pretty boring. But then at the very end of his 40-minute speech, I think it was 39 minutes, 32 seconds, the very end of his speech, he says, and to you, Milton, about your claims towards the Federal Reserve, you're right. But because of people like you, it won't happen again. He was referencing the Great Depression in Milton Friedman's book. And then there's Woodrow Wilson, who actually made the quote over a speech and in an autobiography in the 20s. He was sources saying that he is a most unhappy man because he has unwillingly handed over this great country into the hands of a few wealthy men. The Federal Reserve has had two jobs since the beginning of its existence: keep the economy stable for laymen like you and I, and keep the wealth transferring to the elite subtly. I'm editing this and I realized there was a whole clip that was missing about Ben Strong and the Warburg. So Ben Strong was at the meeting. He was with one of the huge banks for JP, and he ended up being leadership for the Federal Reserve. Because there's people out there that say, oh, the Jekyll Island wasn't actually what led to the Federal Reserve. That's a big flowing kablooey conspiracy. It's not. Ben Strong was there. He was a part of the planning committee, and then Woodrow Wilson appointed him to be the very first Federal Reserve chair in 1914. And then Paul Warburg ended up being the vice chair in 1916. And guess what Paul Warburg's brother did? Max. Oh, he was just over there, getting his way up in the international banking world of Germany, and ended up being one of the chairs of the German Reichsbank. The Nazi bank? And it's kind of weird that after World War I, we became the world's #1 creditor, and there was a global trade breakdown that happened after that bank failure that the Federal Reserve could have prevented that started the Great Depression, that led to Germany's economy failing, and that led to the uprising of the Third Reich and World War II. But those can't all be connected.
Shalom. Once again, all praises, honor, and glory unto the Most High. Yahweh Ba'asham Yahawashai, Ba'asham Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of the Great Millstone, and salutations, Soye Sinsiakiam. And this is your brother Abawan back again with another video through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahawashai, Ba'asham Rakakwadash. All praises and glory is due, especially in the times that we're in. And when George Carlin said it's one big club and they are not in it, of course what he says doesn't really matter. It's not the man of the Lord, right? But when the men of the Lord agreed with him, right, that's when you should have known that, hey, this is something that has validity, right? Because ultimately it is the men of the Lord that have the 100% truth on the earth. So yeah, okay, you see basically the idea of how the elites of Esau Edom managed to take over and control all the wealth in the world using the Federal Reserve. And that's exactly what we're talking about right here, okay? This is showing you, right, that the elites of Esau Edom really are in control. Is it not Mayer Shelbauer that said, give me control of a nation's wealth and I care not who makes the laws, right? Mayer Shelbauer, which I believe was and here it is right here. Don't want to waste any time. Right, this is right here. Mayer Amschel Rothschild, which of course, if you know about the history of the Rothschild family, which I believe you can watch the Rothschild movie on YouTube for free, right? And you basically get the entire history of the Rothschild family. And it was a Mayer Amschel Bauer, which is the patriarch, right, of the Rothschild family. You know, and his name was originally Bauer, but he changed his name to Rothschilds, which is, and if you go to into the etymology, Rothschild means red shield or red child, which is the, like it says here, the patriarch of the Rothschild banking dynasty. And this is the quote: "Give me control of a nation's money, and I care not who makes the laws." Right. And that's basically what the Federal Reserve, okay, was set up for, right? In order to basically control the wealth of all the different nations that are on the earth. And this history, right, the things that guy was going into was showing you that yes, 100%, and now even more people are beginning to see it. And there is an elite, okay, there is a group of people that control all the wealth, and then in turn control the policies and everything that happens in the world. And that is who we refer to as the elites of Esau Edom. Because who is in rulership of the earth right now? Let's go to the book of, so this is the book of Job 9 verse 24. "The earth is given into the hand of the wicked. He covereth the faces of the judges thereof. If not, where and who is he?" Because the world is being controlled right now by Esau Edom. Specifically, the elites of Esau Edom. They are the ones that are in power, and they are the ones that set up the world in the way that it is, right? And going back to that quote, and basically just going back to that quote of "Give me control of a nation's wealth, and I care not who makes the laws," right? So now, this is the book of Habakkuk chapter 2, and this is the book of Habakkuk chapter 2, and this is basically going into Esau's greed, right? Because I'm thinking of something that Nelly Fuller Jr. said, right? Dr. Nelly Fuller Jr. said that whenever Edomites move, they move only for war, right? So every aspect of Esau Edom's system, like I said, that all of Esau's systems move for war, including the finances as well, which is why in his video he said that the Federal Reserve was basically set up in order to fund wars, right? After the establishment of the Federal Reserve, they now had World War I, then World War II. So because of the Federal Reserve, basically the idea is that it becomes easier to fund the wars that Esau Edom wants to use, right? It becomes easier to fund wars and fund the conflicts that Esau Edom creates on the earth. After all, it goes back to this old quote of all wars being bankers' wars, right? So now this is the book of Habakkuk 2, verse 4. "Behold, his soul which is lifted up is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. Yea, also because he transgresseth by wine, he is a proud man, neither keepeth at home, who enlargeth his desire as hell, and is as death and cannot be satisfied, but gathereth unto him all nations, and heapeth unto him all people." And that's exactly what Esau Edom is doing, right? These devils, their MO has been basically exposed all the way their MO has been exposed all the way in the scriptures. Their operations have been exposed all the way in the scriptures. You can clearly see, right, what these devils and their plans are. You can clearly see. Let me rephrase that. You can clearly see what this devil is and their plans are in the scriptures, right? Because now going back to what I was saying, okay. That's now going back to what I was saying, right? Esau Edom, and this is how you know, right, that the so-called white man is Esau Edom, because he fits, as it's written, he fits that description in the Bible. So we'll start by getting the book of Revelation 6. So this is the book of Revelation chapter 6 verse 3. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard a second beast say, "Come and see." And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. I know, slacking about all the noise. I had to go to work early today, and I'm still at the job, but I have to do this quick video, man, because I have to do this quick video before the spirit leaves me. Okay, so Revelation 6 verse 4. Right, now this is basically, of course, going into the red horse, which is Esau Edom, that was set up on the earth to make war and take peace from the earth. Okay, because this is like I said, this is the modus operandi of Esau Edom. This is what the white man commonly does, right, on the earth. Okay, this is what he was set up to do on the earth, to be the wicked, okay, to be the devil which the Bible speaks of. And this is, of course, going back to what was written in the book of Maccabees, where it says that as soon as Esau came into power, that evils multiplied on the earth. So let's get this in the book of, that should be, here it is, First Maccabees 1 verse 7. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died. Of course, he's speaking of Alexander the Greek, okay, Alexander the Idumean, right, Alexander the Edomite, okay, because if you go into the history, and even the scriptures goes into this as well, right? Before Alexander became the king of Greece, he was the king of Macedonia, okay, and the Edomites had already taken over Macedonia at that time, right? Going all the way back to the Persian Empire, to Haman the Agagites, right? So Haman was identified as an Edomite in the scriptures, okay? But in the book of additions to Esther, right, it says that, let's go to, no, let's not go to that, but that's just basically the background of the history, right? In the book of additions to Esther, and I believe it's the 14th chapter, it clearly says that Haman was from Macedonia, okay? So the Edomites had taken over Macedonia from the dark-skinned Japhites, right? And then taken over Greece once again from the dark-skinned Japhites, and began to call themselves the Greeks and the Romans. And this is where the history goes back to, right? And the Most High, however, Shai put that spirit on them to basically take over and conquer the earth by the force of the sword, because that is their blessing, right? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because they are seeing the same thing happen to this day, right? And just because these devils are using finances now to do that, right? They're using money and using wealth and using basically all kinds of financial trickery and crimes in order to do that, which is why you see the banking families are the ones in power, because now, right, what Esau uses to control the world, or part of the weapons that Esau uses to control the world, is finances, which is why you see, Shahid Bolsin, he always talks about the owners and controllers of global financial capital, the OCGFC, right? Because more and more people in the world are beginning to see that the elites of Esau Edom, right, they're beginning to see, the truth of the elites of Esau Edom, that truly, only a small group of Edomites are in full control of the wealth, right, and the riches of the whole world. And being in control of the wealth and the riches of the world puts them in control of the world as well, right? Because now people are seeing, and now the people of the world are also beginning to see that your global leaders are simply puppets for, once again, those groups of those owners and controllers of global financial capital, right? The elites of Esau Edom. It's like the apostle says, man, Trump is middle management. You understand? Right? Trump is middle management. He's not. He doesn't have any true power of himself. He's just the figurehead, which is basically what all presidents are. Now, First Maccabees 1 verse 8, and his servants bear rule, everyone in his place, and after his death they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied on the earth, right? Because the world began to go down this path as soon as Esau Edom came into power, and because these devils are the devils which the Bible speaks of, right? You can clearly see that their rulership, as the scriptures say, that's in the book of Proverbs, the 29th chapter, has caused the whole earth to mourn. Okay, let me go back to the book of Habakkuk. I think I've already read everything I wanted to read from there. Yeah, I've read everything I wanted to read from there. So yeah, so yeah, man. So yeah, this is just this video is just, or what you basically are seeing, just showing you, right, that the world is beginning to see who the real devil is, who the real ruler of the world is, and who the real devil is ultimately, right? The elites of Esau Edom, and that they are the ones in power. So with that, I'll end the video right here. Once again, all praise, honor, and glory unto the Most High, Yahweh Basham Yawashai, Basham Rakakwadash, Wa of Bad Bakbal, and through the Spirit of Yakiam, and you are quite edified. Shalom.